He's the most dominant darts player in history, 16 world titles, countless trophies, and an attitude that crushed competitors. But behind the fame and flawless finishes, Phil Taylor built up a list of enemies. Some were rivals, others personal, and a few he flat out couldn't stand. These are the 7 players Phil Taylor hated and why it got ugly. Paul Nicholson didn't just walk into the world of darts, he barged in, sunglasses on, full of swagger and ready to stir things up. When he beat Phil Taylor in the 2011 UK Open, it wasn't just an upset, it was a statement. Nicholson celebrated like he just won the World Championship. And then came the moment that crossed the line. He waved Taylor off the stage. Bold? Absolutely. Smart? Maybe not. Because if there's one thing you don't do, it's disrespect Phil Taylor in front of a roaring crowd.
Where's Newton now on Friday? He's not been at his best, but he's really been battling.
If he gets 5-0 down against me, it'd be a different kettle of fish. Seriously, you know, I ain't going to lay him off the hook. Paul Nicholson messed about, wind the crowd up, you know, wind the crowd up. Why? No idea. I think fella's an idiot for doing that. And he's going to go away and learn about it, you know, because the last thing you want is to get the home crowd on your back. You know, people were supporting him at the beginning, thought it was, you know, but don't do that.
Taylor didn't take it quietly. After the match, he called Nicholson very silly, saying he was more interested in theatrics than throwing. To Taylor, this wasn't confidence, it was a cheap attempt to build a name off controversy. He saw Nicholson as a loudmouth trying to climb the ladder by stepping on his shoulders. But Nicholson wasn't backing down. In interviews, he played the heel role perfectly, saying Taylor's era was over and that the sport needed new blood. The media ate it up. Fans were divided. Some loved the chaos, others couldn't stand him. But one thing was certain, Nicholson had pushed darts into drama and Phil Taylor hated it. What started as a one-off upset quickly turned into a personal grudge. From that point on, Taylor treated Nicholson with an icy stare and a silent message. You're not in my league. But the next name on this list? He didn't just annoy Taylor, he humiliated him in front of the world. Peter Manley wasn't just a rival to Phil Taylor, he was the guy who turned every match into a grudge match. Known for his arrogant walk-ons and smug grin, Manley loved getting under people's skin. But with Taylor, it went far beyond banter. In the 2002 World Championship final, Manley got destroyed, 7-0. It was total domination. And when it was over, he did the unthinkable, refused to shake Taylor's hand. The crowd erupted in boos, commentators were stunned, and Taylor, he just stared, ice cold. That moment flipped a switch. It wasn't just gamesmanship anymore, it was personal war. And from then on, every time they met on stage, it felt like something might explode. Off the oche, things didn't cool down. Manley tried to smooth things over by inviting Taylor to his wedding. Taylor never showed. No call, no excuse, just complete silence. To him, Manley had crossed a line that couldn't be undone. Fans turned on Manley, nicknaming him One Dart as a mockery of his fading game. But he didn't care. He leaned into the villain role, knowing that every jab, every smirk, every delay on the line would get under Taylor's skin. And it worked. Because even when Taylor was winning, you could see it in his eyes. He couldn't stand him. But Taylor's next rivalry didn't come from disrespect. It came from someone just as good, maybe better. If Peter Manley was the antagonist, Raymond van Barnavald was something far more dangerous, an equal. When Barney left the BDO to join the PDC in 2006, he was already a 4-time world champion. And from the moment he arrived, it was clear. Taylor's reign had a new threat. Their matches were electric. Every leg felt like a heavyweight round. But the tension wasn't just about talent, it was pride, pressure, and legacy colliding. The 2007 World Championship final was legendary. Van Barnavald came from 3-0 down to beat Taylor in a sudden death leg. It was the kind of loss that burned deep. Taylor didn't just lose a match, he lost the aura of being unbeatable. Over the years, the rivalry escalated. Then came 2012. After a grueling semi-final at the World Championship, Taylor won. But when Barney went in for a handshake, Taylor snapped. Cameras caught the two in a heated, almost physical confrontation. Taylor's face was red with rage. Barnavald stood his ground. The darts world had never seen anything like it. Taylor later called his actions disgraceful, trying to walk it back, but the damage was already done. Respect or not, these two weren't just rivals. They were opposite forces, clashing again and again in matches that felt less like sport and more like war. And what came next wasn't just a rivalry, it was pure provocation. Kevin Painter had talent, no doubt, but what really made him stand out was his fire. He wasn't afraid to show emotion on stage, even if it meant clashing with the king of darts himself. Painter had already come close to dethroning Taylor once in their legendary 2004 World Championship final. He pushed the match to a sudden death leg, only for Taylor to escape by the skin of his teeth. That loss haunted Painter and fueled him. By the time they met again in the 2005 quarterfinals, Painter was done being polite. He was fired up, emotional, and, according to Taylor, getting too personal. After a particularly tense leg, the two exchanged words, with Painter accusing Taylor of trying to humiliate him by deliberately finishing the match on the bullseye. For Taylor, it was just confidence. For Painter, it was mockery. Their interactions became less about darts and more about pride. Taylor later admitted that he used psychological tactics to throw opponents off, and Painter clearly felt the pressure. He once claimed that playing Taylor was like stepping into a mental battlefield where you were never in control. To the fans, it was gripping. To Taylor, Painter was a guy who let emotions get in the way of greatness. And to Painter, Taylor was the smug champion who never gave anyone else room to breathe. But the next clash wasn't even on the dartboard. It happened in front of a camera and got awkward fast. Wayne Mardle wasn't your typical dart star. He was flashy, unpredictable, and always had something to say. While his playing days never quite matched Taylor's dominance, Mardle carved out a second career as a pundit, and that's where the sparks really flew. In 2017, after a World Championship match, Mardle was doing post-game interviews. Taylor had just won, but Mardle didn't lead with praise. Instead, he poked at Taylor's behavior, questioning his focus and asking whether he was starting to let emotion get the better of him. For a man known for mental toughness, it was a jab Taylor didn't expect and didn't appreciate. The air turned cold. Taylor's tone shifted. He stared back at Mardle, clearly irritated, and gave short, clipped answers. What should have been a routine interview turned into a passive-aggressive standoff. Viewers picked up on the tension immediately, and while Mardle tried to keep it professional, Taylor later lashed out, calling him and Kevin Painter provokers who were more interested in headlines than honesty. Taylor saw it as jealousy. Mardle saw it as fair criticism. But to everyone watching, it was clear. Even in retirement, Taylor had no patience for anyone questioning his legacy. And the next player didn't just question it, he was there to replace it. Every legend eventually faces the same nightmare. Someone younger, faster, and hungrier coming for their throne. For Phil Taylor, that someone was Michael van Gerwen, and he didn't come quietly. When Van Gerwen exploded onto the scene, he was unlike anything the sport had seen. Fearless, aggressive, and wildly consistent, he began dismantling the old guard, Taylor included. What stung the most? Van Gerwen didn't grow up idolizing Taylor. He grew up ready to beat him. And as the wins stacked up, it became clear. This wasn't just a rivalry, it was a takeover. Taylor, the man who once owned the stage, was suddenly fighting to keep up. In match after match, Van Gerwen made statements, not just by winning, but by dominating. He didn't taunt. He didn't gloat, he simply crushed. In 2023, at a light-hearted exhibition match meant for fun, Van Gerwen destroyed Taylor with such force that fans started calling it elder abuse. Online jokes surfaced, MVG's bullying an old man, and while Taylor laughed it off, you could see a flicker in his eyes. This wasn't a peer. This was the guy who came to finish what Taylor started. To Taylor, Van Gerwen represented something uncomfortable, the reality that time catches everyone, even the best to ever do it. But before all the modern drama, there was one betrayal that hit deeper than any defeat. Long before Van Gerwen, before Barnavald, even before Manley, there was Mike Gregory, and his name still leaves a bitter taste in Phil Taylor's mouth. Back in 1993, darts was at a breaking point. A group of top players, frustrated with the BDO's lack of TV coverage and prize money, decided to split off and form their own league, the PDC. It was a massive gamble. Careers were on the line, but the group believed in something bigger. Mike Gregory was one of them, until he wasn't. At the very last moment, just before the break became public, Gregory backed out. he rejoined the BDO, leaving Taylor and the others blindsided. It was a blow not just to the movement but to the trust that bound them. To Taylor, it wasn't just a business decision, it was a betrayal. Years later, Taylor reflected on it with subtle jabs, saying Gregory missed out on history and would never be part of what they built. And he was right. As the PDC grew into a global powerhouse, Gregory faded into the background. His moment had passed, and Taylor never let him forget it. It was the kind of grudge Taylor didn't need to shout about. The silence said it all, because for Phil Taylor, respect wasn't given, it was earned, and once it was lost, it was gone for good. Phil Taylor didn't just dominate darts, he dominated people. He played with precision, power, and a psychological edge that few could handle. But along the way, he made enemies. Some pushed his buttons, others crossed the line, and a few just happened to be in his way when the pressure exploded. Love him or hate him, one thing's certain. Phil Taylor's legacy wasn't built on peace. It was forged in rivalry, tension, and moments that changed darts forever. The real question is, did these feuds fuel his greatness, or were they the price he paid to stay on top?